Hi everyone, and thanks again for the quality of your work so far. I always leave you a few days in order for you to collaborate and exchange among each other in order to comment on each other's posts, and then I go back over all of your work and comment it in order for everyone to be aligned. So far it's been great. In Module 3, you really grasped the idea of having an authentic task, often open-ended, and then you had one to design a task and two to align one criteria that aligns with your task, and you've been doing that really well. So I will keep on reading your post and comment about that, so you have explored the rubrics and see what are the differences between a traditional assessment and a more authentic IB assessment. And basically you see that each criterion brings something perhaps more than a traditional assessment. So in criterion A, it's to be able to solve challenging problems in an unfamiliar situation. In criterion B, it's to be able to generalize a situation, to find a relationship, or to find a rule by selecting by themselves. If I'm thinking about the students, they would be able to select which model is appropriate for the situation and then to find the rule, instead of having like the teacher ask, please find me the quadratic equation. In criterion C, once again, is to have more complex problems in which the students have to think about the many steps of course, the lines of reasoning, but also like when there are many steps to structure their work in an organized, logical, coherent manner. So that is module C and criterion C. And then we have criterion D, in which they transfer their knowledge in a real life authentic situation. So, and they are able to assess the degree of accuracy of their solution in that context. So that also always having the idea of using the concepts and the global context exploration through the task. So that is something which is added if I compare it to a more traditional assessment. So we just want to give the students the ability to develop skills that will enable them in their future to take on any task and not always follow what the teacher would tell them what to do. So they will develop skills to be able to solve problems by themselves, basically. In module 4, we want to complete many important aspects of, parts of the unit plan. So the first learning engagement activity actually goes back to the inquiry. So we had a statement of inquiry, and we'll go back to it, and we will develop questions that goes to explore the statement of inquiry. We will develop questions. There are two parts in the unit plan. So if you click on the discussions, I encourage you to use either my template, or else you can use the MYP unit planner. So when you do that, then you get to a unit plan. I will use the one that I've started before, and we had a statement of inquiry, conceptual understanding, and then I'm going to show you how, using that statement of inquiry, we will ask inquiry questions. So we have factual, conceptual, and debatable questions to develop. We need at least one of each. Here are comments that I have to remind you. in the inquiry questions section, we are in the inquiry section of the unit plan. The inquiry questions, we do not include the subjects, so we do not include mathematics unless it is stated, like the mathematical puzzle discoveries. There was one of the global context exploration where mathematics is clearly stated, but for the other global context explorations, we do not state the word mathematics. We do not include the content. These questions could be asked by teachers from many subjects or through the years or topics. So we do not include the subject in these questions for now. However, I'll show you that right after. This is in the unit plan, but right after, when I will go to the action section of the unit plan, we will ask these questions, we will use these questions, but we will add mathematical content. So it's just a step. So here, the questions have to be focused on two things: the concepts and the exploration of the global context. Well, the global context exploration. Factual questions, conceptual question, debatable question. All questions can be, it's not because it is a conceptual question that we will ask the questions using the concepts here. We can have a factual question about the concept. We can have a debatable question using the concepts. So here is an example, and we have the keyword. It's often like what, when for the factual, how, and why for the conceptual, and the debatable is pretty obvious actually. So for the factual question here, if you look at my concepts and my global context exploration, you'll see that I'll use all of these. So that's why I have put them, the words in color. So if I ask what is a relationship, then I'm asking a factual question about my key concept relationship. That could be asked in science, that could be asked in individuals and societies, that could be asked in many subjects. But here, of course, when I will present it to my students, perhaps I am focusing on the exponential relationship. So I'll go way further down in the action section of the unit plan. In the learning process, I will use my questions. You see here my inquiry question: what is an exponential relationship? I added the word, well, the mathematical content here, and then I will have an activity that will follow that. But what you can see is that actually completing this part will be Learning Engagement 4. So it starts with a question. When we use our inquiry questions that we have developed on top, we make sure that we will have the concepts plus the global context exploration, which will be explored before the summative assessment task. So we will explore the concepts and develop our comprehension of the concepts and of the global context exploration within activities, and then the students will transfer this knowledge and skills, these knowledge skills, in the summative assessment task. So that is something that we want to make sure to do. So if I go back on top here, I could ask what are the impacts of consumption on the environment, and then we can explore that question somewhere along the way. We might also see some impacts and perhaps let the students explore some other impacts or of other type of consumption in the summative assessment task. Conceptual is how and why, so I could have how do we represent a relation between quantities. Once again, somewhere along the way, perhaps I will ask that question. But instead of saying a relationship, an exponential, once again, relationship between quantities, because that's what I want to explore. And here, once again, I will have an activity. Okay, so this is the pattern. So we have to have at least one question of each type within the unit. So remember that a unit plan can last, let's say, 15 hours, 20 hours, 10 hours, 25 hours. So of course, we will not be asking these questions every day, every moment of the unit, but somewhere along the way they will come up. Once again, is it always possible to represent the impact of consumption on the environment by relationship? Perhaps not, but we can explore that question with the students. It might be done after the summative assessment task. It might be done before. So I just selected a few questions here. So the learning engagement one is to think about questions here that relates to your statement of inquiry, because it relates to the key concepts and the global context exploration. And then you go in that part and you can add lines. Remember that you just have to press the right button, and I could add lines underneath, and then I could ask a series of questions. So this is one of the things that we want to have here. What I can tell also is, why do we ask questions? What does it do? Asking questions will make sure that we will use inquiry, because if we let the students explore the answer before giving the answer to the students, and perhaps there is no single answer also, but it's important to give time to the students in order for them to think, not for every questions along the unit once again, but the strategy in which we let the students think and perhaps share with their colleagues. So often we will let the students think by themselves. We will let the students collaborate and perhaps compare the answer, try to perhaps collaboration could also be in the formative assessment, because sometimes two students will compare the answers, and all they will try to see if they're right. And also within inquiry, because we ask questions, we make sure that we will ask them to use their prior knowledge. So these aspects, remember, are parts of the approaches to teaching: to use concepts, to use global context, to use inquiry, to use prior knowledge, to use collaboration. These are all parts of the teaching approaches to teaching. The other two aspects of the approaches to teaching are actually the formative assessment. How will you make sure that the students have understood what you meant them to understand, and the differentiation, which can be in three parts: the content, the processes, and the products. So when you do an activity, you might give choices to the students in order for weaker students to be able to do the task, and for stronger students to be perhaps more challenged. So asking questions here and there, once again, is learning engagement number 1, but it prepares for learning engagement number 4. Also then, the second one, it's about the approaches to learning. We have to select one specific skill that we want students to develop within the approaches to learning. So there is a template here that you can use. This one is useful. So you have to select a strand. When we talk about a strand, we talk about like A1 or A2, A3, and so on. Approaches to learning scale that we will find in the guide MYP, from principles into practice, and then we will think about an activity, which is explicit learning experience, and another activity which would be more implicit, and this is what we want to do. Of course, this will go also in the unit plan. So here we will have to identify this ATL category, the skill cluster, the skill indicator, and the activities. Actually, the activities don't belong there, but I asked my students, my teachers, to write it here, because I want to copy paste it in the approaches, the chart, the approaches to learning chart, school chart. So I'll continue in the second video.